the kind of things that I was hoping to cover today, I was going to let you know a little bit more about IMS Research itself and the company that acquired it fairly recently, IHS. I was going to tell you a little bit about our security research. Within the surveillance industry, embedded vision is still known as video content analysis to most of the suppliers. So I was going to explain how we define video content analysis. I'll provide a couple of examples of how video content analysis is being used in the real world. I've got some of our forecasts for both PC-based software and intelligent video surveillance devices, and I'll explain what those categories are later in the presentation. And I'll talk about some of the barriers to greater adoption of video content analysis. I'll go on to compare the attractiveness of the video surveillance market with the automotive market, since I've got a background in automotive, and talk about some of the lessons that have been learned from vendors that have used video content analysis in security. And then at the end there'll be plenty of time for questions. So IMS Research is a supplier of market research on electronics related subjects. I've mentioned two of the areas that we work in, automotive and security, but we also do work in medical electronics, we do work in consumer electronics, power and energy, to name just a few. We don't just supply market research, but also consultancy and conferences, we don't focus on any areas outside of the electronic sphere. IMS Research was acquired in March this year by IHS. IHS is one of the world's largest market research companies. It has around 5,500 employees and is quoted on the New York Stock Exchange. It operates in a diverse range of areas, but it really wants to move into this technology area as it sees it as a growth market for the future, and that's why it acquired IMS Research. Within the security and fire space, we look at all kinds of different areas, from access control to intruder alarms, workforce management, and the intelligent video, the embedded video, video content analysis comes under this video surveillance area. Selection of our security customers. All of these are vendors, manufacturers of security systems. But we also supply to service suppliers as well. There's a large market for service organisations in the security market. So how do we define video content analysis, or VCA? Well, we said that it's software that analyses live or recorded video streams to detect, classify and track predefined objects or behaviour patterns. So that includes classic security applications such as perimeter intrusion, abandoned object, but also business intelligence applications like people counting and queue length monitoring. It doesn't include license plate recognition, nor does it include some of the more basic algorithms like camera tamper, system health check and video motion detection, as lots of those algorithms are now standard on cameras from a range of suppliers. So I thought I'd first present a couple of instances where VCA has been used in the real world. And the most common security application is that of intrusion detection. Now, these days, intrusion detection solutions are sold as an aid to man surveillance rather than a standalone system. So in other words, an alarm is provided to a security guard. The security guard looks at the video footage and decides on what action to take. The requirements do vary greatly though. So an indoor intrusion detection from short range is much more simple to implement than, say, an outdoor application along perimeter or fence in an outdoor environment where it could be affected by environmental conditions like wind, rain, those kind of things. And here you could see one of the pictures is actually a coastal defence system. So this looks out for ships along, in this particular case, it's a coast in the Middle East. A palace is very close to that particular coast, and cameras are mounted at regular intervals that scan areas of the coast, looking for ships, looking for anything that shouldn't be there, anything that stands out. They must cope, obviously, not only with wind, rain, those kind of environmental conditions, but also with waves and tidal patterns. If you're looking for, I guess, almost the opposite of intrusion, people trying to get out of a facility, video content analysis is often used in prisons. Again, it's an aid to man surveillance, but one of the unique characteristics here is that prisoners have lots of time to plan and study the security system. Therefore, it has to be a very robust system that's put in place. It must be highly effective, and obviously the publicity from anybody escaping in a system from a facility that was using video content analysis would be very damaging. I think it's true to say that vendors of video content analysis have gradually come to advertise that some false alarms are inevitable. The early days of video content analysis being used in security applications, there was a lot of over-promising of the technology. Companies now recognise that there is some false alarms are inevitable, although they're obviously trying to minimise the number of those over time. In the prison environment, video analytics is often combined with audio analytics. So the audio will be looking for specific words, and when a prisoner utters one of those words, then video will be tracked to see what is actually happening in that scenario. A high-profile example of how video content analysis is being used. This is a high-speed rail link in China, and the train moves so fast that it's very difficult for the driver to be able to stop the train in time to avoid hitting any obstructions on the line. Therefore, the Chinese government has invested in cameras that are positioned regularly along the train line, and the train can be stopped automatically if there is an obstruction in the way that could potentially derail or damage the train. Obviously, a very low rate of false alarms is required here, otherwise the high-speed train would very quickly become a low-speed train. But that being said, to achieve that, the system is just looking for things that will damage the train or will derail it. So if it's an obstruction that if somebody's going to be harmed, for instance, it doesn't take account of that, it just takes account of the damage to the train. Now, there are two markets for video content analysis, really, in simple terms. You can either have a camera, a dumb camera that's linked to a PC, and that's where the processing is carried out on the PC, or you can have it embedded in the camera. Well, it doesn't need to be a camera, it could be another type of surveillance device, such as a video encoder or a DVR or an NVR. But we track both of those two markets. So the market for PC-based software, the first one of those markets I referred to, it's still a fairly small market, worth around $50 million, projected to grow at a CAGR of around 20% over the next few years, up to just over $80 million. And the type of companies that supply to this market, some of the names are iOmniscient, iMetis, Kenio, those may be names that you're familiar with. Intelligent video surveillance devices, these are the devices with the embedded intelligence. And again, the market isn't massive for these at the moment. It's worth just over $100 million, but it's projected to grow at a faster rate. The difficulty here is it's very difficult to forecast this market. And one of the reasons is that suppliers of video surveillance devices are starting to embed algorithms for free as standard features within their devices. So we're just looking at the market in our reports for chargeable analytics. So those free algorithms, they're not included within here. Now, as you can see, only a small proportion of devices actually use video content analysis. So if you look at the whole market for video surveillance devices that were sold in 2011, there's only about 2 to 3% that features some kind of video content analysis. So what are the reasons for that? Well, the biggest reason is that most cameras are not monitored live. So in most cases, you'll just have a camera that's put in place, and the footage is only looked at if an event occurs. If an event doesn't occur, it just continually records, and the recording is then recorded over. So live alerts in those circumstances aren't required. The users of those cameras don't often see a use for video content analysis. But other barriers include the high price of the algorithms. There's been a lot of overselling of the capabilities of video content analysis in the early days, and that led to disillusionment and disappointment with customers. There's a lack of market education, as we saw before. It's not a big market at the moment. The vendors that are in there are small companies. It's very difficult for them to get their message across to the end user. Difficult to compare solutions from different vendors. There's no benchmarking organisation. So companies just tend to go with the supplier that they know. And expert installation is required. Although that has become easier over time, it still requires an installer or an integrator to go out to the facility and actually configure the camera or the surveillance device correctly to be able to monitor in an appropriate way. One area that's of growing interest is the consumer surveillance market. That was worth around $500 million last year and is projected to grow at around 15% a year. And here a number of solutions have been proposed. They address some of the issues to greater adoption, such as the high price, the capabilities aren't oversold, they don't require expert installation, but that fundamental issue I was talking about before about few surveillance cameras being monitored live, that still remains an issue in the consumer surveillance market. It's very difficult for those companies to educate the market. Again, they're small companies. They're not like, they don't have the resources of Apple or Microsoft. They're not able to educate customers very easily. And again, it's difficult to compare solutions from different vendors. So, as I mentioned before, I wanted to compare the attractiveness of the security market with both the business intelligence market and the market that I mentioned at the start, one that I have some background in automotive. So the security market, as we've seen, it's a large market, and it has lots of growth potential as well. One of the few markets that's continued to grow during the economic downturn, but it lacks a killer application. And also, by its very nature, security is a cost. And it's very, I'd argue that it's a more difficult proposition to get somebody to invest in something that will save them money than something that will make them money. Customer requirements are difficult to achieve. A very low rate of false alarms is expected. But the barriers to entry are low. Small companies can quite easily enter this market. There's new companies entering it every year, every time we study the market. And the price of analytics is still quite high. The business intelligence market, the kind of algorithms that you'll see here are people counting, queue length monitoring, dwell time, people flow, face recognition. Now the actual size of that market at the moment is pretty small, but it has a lot of potential for growth, and it does have a killer application. I'd argue that people counting is an application that most businesses would get some utility out of. So if they've already got surveillance cameras installed within their facility, then adapting them for people counting is quite an enticing proposition. Also, you can demonstrate a clear return on investment. You can say how much money you will make or generate from installing some kind of algorithm for business intelligence. And the customer requirements are fairly relaxed in comparison with the security market. So, although a low rate of false alarms is always required, you can get away with a higher rate of false alarms in the business intelligence market than you can in the security market. If you only have a 95% sort of accuracy, it still delivers value. The barriers to entry are low, but the price of analytics in the business intelligence market is a lot lower as well. Automotive, the kind of applications here, I think Jeff mentioned some of them in his presentation earlier: collision mitigation, lane departure warning, traffic sign recognition, and then interior-facing applications such as drowsiness detection and position detection for advanced airbag systems. So the automotive market is obviously a massive market, and it's a market that's growing, particularly in emerging regions, China and India. But it's difficult to see a killer application, an application that will appear on every vehicle. Although some of those safety applications before are quite innovative and quite exciting, typically they're sold as optional extras. And take rates on optional extras tend to be pretty low, usually less than 5% of cars. The return on investment is clear when they are offered as optional extras, because the vehicle manufacturer can charge a certain price for them and increase its revenues. But the customer requirements are tough. There must be, often these are safety applications, so they must be 100% effective. The barriers to entry are also tough in the automotive market. Vendors need to be automotive qualified. They need to have a history of delivering products to the automotive market. And the price of analytics can often be quite low as well. Automotive manufacturers are very skilled at getting the very best prices out of their suppliers. So that can be a bit of a challenge. So I thought I'd put a few lessons that have been learned from security, because the security market has been using video content analysis for quite a long time now, despite the relatively low penetration. First of all, it's very important to demonstrate a clear return on investment. That is something that the security vendors really struggle to do initially. Installation needs to be simple. Originally, when video content analysis first came into the security market, it required PhD students to go in and install it, and often they'd need to come back again a few days later to recalibrate the system. All of those kind of issues created some kind of barriers within customers to accepting the system. Customer expectations must be managed. So the security industry was very guilty initially of overselling the capabilities of what video content analysis could do in security. And in fact, that's something that they still struggle with today, but often as a result of TV programs and Hollywood movies that show capabilities that just can't be achieved in the real world. So a lot of the time that's spent by vendors of video content analysis these days is spent on education. And I'd stress that that's really important in any of these markets, to educate customers as to realistic expectations of what the technology can deliver. So what's next for the security industry? Well, I mentioned before that some algorithms are likely to become standard features. Virtual tripwire is one that's been mentioned before, for simple indoor kind of virtual tripwire. Certain algorithms have already become commoditized items. We expect more to happen like that in the future. A lot of the innovation in video content analysis is likely to come from outside the security market, from the automotive market, from consumer markets. Although security was one of the first markets to use video content analysis, the innovation is coming from outside of security now. And there's a trend as processor power increases and algorithms are refined to be less processor intensive, to embed solutions. So the embedded market will grow faster than the PC-based market. That's more or less everything I had. One of my colleagues asked me to slip this slide into my presentation, as IMS Research also does conferences. The Embedded Vision Alliance is a partner of our Touch Gesture Motion conference. So there is an actual discount for EVA members on that. It's a conference that has around 200 attendees. We've done lots of these Touch Gesture Motion conferences before, but this will be the first one that we're going to be doing in Europe. And there's some contact information on there if you want to know a little bit more about it, but you can always come through to me as well, and I can supply you with information.